OMNI Creative Filter Photography course with Caroline Tran. Take one. I hope you're inspired so far to jump out there and explore, even though we've only covered one wand so far. If you're ready for more, let's talk about the stretch glass and see what you can do with this simple little tool right here. The stretch glass. What is it? The stretch glass has a curved side and a flat side, and it's able to add beautiful streaks into your photo. So you can see in this photo here, this is all actually reflections that the stretch glass was picking up from the trees that were overhead. So we were standing under a tree. The stretch glass, the flat part, caught the reflection of the tree above and was able to shine the reflection of the tree back into the lens. So as you prepare to use your stretch glass, what you'll need to know is how focal length is gonna affect the outcome that you have. So let's take a look on why focal length matters. The shorter the focal length, the more defined your wand is gonna be. And the longer your focal length, the more obscure your wand is gonna be. So you can take a look here. This was shot on a 45mm lens, which is relatively wide. It was actually shot on a medium format camera, but you can see how well defined that wand is. You can see exactly where that rectangle is. I can almost superimpose it over the photo, right? The longer the focal length, the more obscure the wand is gonna be. So take a look here. You can see this was shot on a 100mm lens, and while you can still see where it starts and ends, the border is not as defined. You can't exactly tell the exact cutoff. It's a much softer transition from where the wand ended to where the wand started. And as you are deciding what your settings should be, you should know how aperture is going to affect the look you're gonna get. So take a look here. The larger the aperture, the more well-defined your wand is gonna be. So this was shot on f/16, and you can see the wand is super defined. You can clearly see, you can literally see the wand in the photo right now, right? So if you choose a wide aperture, you're gonna be able to see the wand. If you want a more natural effect, and if you want your wand to look more obscure, thus more natural, you're gonna wanna shoot on the smallest aperture possible. So this same exact setup, same setting, the only difference was I changed my exposure so that I can have an f-stop of 1.4. And you can see how much softer the effect is. It's not as obvious. You still see the streaks of wheat, just like here, right? Here you see the streaks of wheat, but it's super defined and you can see the wand itself. Whereas here, the streaks of wheat is more abstract. You can't quite make out where it begins, where it ends. You can't even quite tell if it's actually the reflection of the wheat or not. It's just kind of soft and subtle. As you choose your lens, if you want a more natural look, you're gonna wanna use as long of a lens as possible and as small of an aperture as possible. The shorter your lens is and/or the larger your aperture is, the more obvious your wand is gonna look. So now that you've picked out your lens, let's talk about how the stretch glass works and what it does. So stretch glass is going to stretch a portion of your image when light passes through the curved part of your wand. So you can see here, as light is coming through the curved part, it's stretching out the light in the image here. This is the setup that I had. So you can see the light is actually bouncing off of the curved part of the wand back into the lens, and that's what's creating these streaks. You can also, one of my favorite things to do is reflect light off of the flat part of the wand, because by doing this you can actually create pretty defined reflections on here. So take a look here. If you look at this image here, you see how there's the bush in the back, but do you see these leaves here? The silhouette of a tree? This tree was actually above us, And what you're seeing is the reflection of the wand catching the silhouettes of the tree up top and reflecting it back into the lens. So this is a setup here. So you can see the bush is to my right, and right above me is all the trees. So with the two sides of the stretch glass, the flat side and the curved side, you can create some really beautiful stretched out light streaks coming in, or you can catch some very defined reflections as well from the flat side. So now that you know how the stretch glass works, let's talk about how you can best utilize it. The stretch glass is really good for if you have a light source that is either in the frame or out of the frame. And regardless, it's going to create these beautiful streaks that come in as a result. It can be subtle like this, or it could be a little bit more exaggerated like this. So you can see here, there's a lot of bokeh that's coming through, and each of those are causing reflections. It's in and of itself as well. So we're seeing like these really cool streaks that are going through. This is the setup that I had. I had the wand here, and you can see the sun was directly shining on the glass. So that's why you're seeing a little bit of haze too. So one thing to notice here is anytime you have sun directly shining on this, you're gonna get a more hazy effect. If the light is not on here, then it's gonna be there will be more contrast and less haze. So you'll see bolder colors. But if you want something more dreamy, then the light hitting it is gonna create something more dreamy like this. This one is actually using the flat side to capture the reflection. So in this shot here, there was a tree directly to here of me. So if I'm holding my camera here, there was a tree here. My wand was here, and my wand was able to capture the reflection of the leaves in the tree and bounce it back into my lens. And I love the effect that this gave. It's kind of like, it looks like a double exposure, which I love double exposures. And it gave it like this just kind of beachy and dreamy vibes to it. It's ethereal, it's a little mysterious, you know, the light coming through. It almost looks like you're shooting through something as well. Like it could be being shot through a window. So this shot here is a landscape shot, and what's cool about this is that I actually got the reflection of the floor in the sky. So how did I do that? I had my wand up top like this. So you see how the floor is full of sand and greenery? The sand and greenery on the floor bounced up to the flat surface of my wand and was able to bounce back into my lens, and that's how it was able to catch into the sky of my photo. You can do a lot of creative things like this where it's essentially double exposures. I superimpose the floor onto the sky, but this is all done in camera. This is not Photoshop. Here's another example of how I was able to use the stretch glass to capture some reflections. So this one, there's same thing, there's a tree to me on this side. I love using trees. Trees just have such beautiful texture. And so by having the wand here, again, I caught the reflection of the trees coming down, bounced back into the lens like this. Now, this one I wanna show you something cool, because like I mentioned earlier in the previous video, anytime you have highlights, it's not going to be able to write any more information on there, right? So whenever you blow out your highlights like this, I'm backlighting it into the sky. So for sure, I've already blown out my sky. That part is blown out and is not able to receive or write any more data on it. So what I did here is I used my hand to block it out. So instead of the sky, it's actually parts of my finger in it. And that's why it's kind of fleshy tone and warm tone. But you can see how much more of the reflection I was able to capture now. You can see almost the texture of the leaves and the trees that I'm capturing right here. So I love this. It looks like a double exposure, but almost like a experimental film. Like I shoot film, so I love playing with film like this, but it's like a double exposure with film where I superimpose the beautiful plumeria tree with the tree that's to my right, whatever that was. So those are some of my favorite ways of using the stretch glass. I can't wait to see what you create with this. Get out there and play with it. Remember, if you're looking for streaks, trying to create light streaks, trying to create like stretch your photo, use the curve part, and that's gonna stretch out any light that it's getting. My favorite use of it is capturing reflections. This is how you can create double exposure like photos, where it's capturing the sky and the floor merged into one photo, or the tree that's above you superimposed onto whatever you're shooting.